His hand slipped between her bound ankles, and for one frozen breath, it was too close, far too close. And she gasped through clenched teeth, "Don't! That's forbidden." Cole Maddox didn't answer right away. The rancher's fingers were rough, sun-cracked, steady like a man used to holding reins and broken gates. Yet, right now they were bracing a woman hanging upside down from a cottonwood branch, her skirts pulled by gravity, her breath coming in sharp, helpless bursts. To anyone watching, it looked wrong. Not just wrong, but sinful. The summer sun burned down on the Arizona plain, dust hanging in the air like a held breath. Sister Amelia Quinn swung slightly, ropes biting into her ankles, her world reduced to pain, heat, and the stranger standing far too close beneath her. His grip tightened, her body jerked. She cried out again, lower this time, panic laced with shame. Her voice came out in short scraps. "Please. Don't." Cole's jaw flexed. From where he stood, anyone could believe he had stopped to stare, to linger, to do something unspeakable beneath the excuse of rescue. That was how it would look. That was how Reverend Silas Crow wanted it to look. Moments earlier, the preacher had declared the punishment righteous, a lesson for any woman who dared defy holy authority. The townsfolk had backed away. Even the deputy had turned his eyes aside. Now only the rancher remained, a man with no collar, no scripture, no right to be here. Amelia's voice trembled again, softer, raw with fear. That place is forbidden. Forbidden by the church, forbidden by vows she had taken before she understood what obedience truly cost. Forbidden by a man who had ordered her strung up like a warning sign beneath the desert sky. Cole shifted his stance, boots grinding into the dirt, his hands adjusted, sliding, pressing, finding balance where there was none. To Amelia, it felt like a violation waiting to happen. To the unseen watchers in the trees and windows, it could only be interpreted one way. A rancher alone with a helpless woman, a forbidden touch and a line about to be crossed. Her breath hitched as the rope creaked overhead. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself not for pain but for disgrace. Cole finally spoke, his voice low, controlled, carrying none of the hunger the moment seemed to promise. "Hold still." The command only deepened the misunderstanding. Was he saving her, or taking advantage of the one moment no one would dare interrupt him? The dust swirled, the rope strained, and in that single, dangerous instant before the knife came out, and before the truth could surface, one question burned hotter than the sun itself. If a man keeps finding himself in moments like this, hands where they should never be, bodies trusting him despite fear, do you think he is still innocent, or do you think he knows exactly what he's doing? Cole didn't wait for the dust to settle. The rope was cut. The branch went still. And Sister Amelia dropped into his arms hard enough to knock the breath from both of them. For 1 second she was pressed against his chest, tangled skirts, racing heartbeat, nowhere to look but up at his face. Then he set her down, steady but close, closer than the townsfolk would ever approve. She tried to stand, and her legs buckled. "Easy," he said, the word plain, almost gentle. To anyone watching from a distance, it could sound like something else entirely. The deputy cleared his throat. Reverend Crow didn't speak. He smiled. Cole knew that smile. It was the kind that waited for rumors to do the work. He lifted Amelia onto his horse without ceremony. One arm under her knees, one at her back. She flinched when he touched her again. Not because it hurt, but because she remembered how close his hands had been moments before. "You shouldn't," she whispered, breath shallow. "I know," he replied, already swinging into the saddle. They rode hard out of sight of the mission, dust trailing behind them like a promise that would not fade. The cottonwoods thinned, the air cooled near the Santa Cruz River, and the world felt less crowded, less watchful. Cole's ranch sat low and quiet. Nothing fancy, just a porch, a wind pump, and a patch of shade that felt like mercy. He carried her inside and set her on the bed, turning away long enough to fetch water and clean cloth. She watched him from the corner of her eye. Men like him were not supposed to be careful. When he knelt to check the rope burns, her breath caught again. The fabric of her habit had shifted on the ride, heat and motion undoing what vows had wrapped tight. She tensed. He noticed. "I'm not here for that," he said, not looking up. His voice sounded tired, like he had been defending himself from the same accusation his whole life. He worked quickly, eyes lowered, hands steady. There was a moment when she felt the air change, when she knew he could see more than she wanted him to. He paused, stood, and pulled a blanket over her knees without a word. That small act confused her more than the rescue. So did the silence that followed. Outside, the wind pump creaked. Somewhere far off, a horse whinnied. "You shouldn't have come back for me," she said at last. "They'll talk. They already are," he replied. "And I don't scare easy." She studied him then, this rancher, with dust on his boots and restraint in his hands, the kind of man who could make a mistake look like a choice, or a choice look like a mistake, as her eyes grew heavy. One thought refused to let her rest. If he crossed lines so easily when no one was watching, what would he dare to do next? Once he was sure no one would stop him. Cole waited until the house went quiet, not the kind of quiet that meant peace, but the kind that meant someone was finally sleeping. Amelia lay still on the narrow bed, breath slow, lashes resting against skin still flushed from sun and fear. He stood in the doorway longer than he needed to, not watching her body, but listening for pain, for fever, for anything that told him leaving would be a mistake. She didn't stir. That was when he made his choice. Cole saddled his horse without turning on a lantern. The moon gave enough light, it always had. He rode back toward the mission with a knot in his chest he didn't bother to name. Men like him learned early that when something felt wrong, it usually was. The church stood quiet at night, all white walls and long shadows, looking harmless the way snakes sometimes do. The door to the back building was still locked, the same one Reverend Crow had pointed at earlier and called forbidden. Cole hesitated, just long enough to listen. A dog barked somewhere behind the chapel, then went quiet like someone had kicked it or tossed it meat. He waited. One breath, two, then slipped along the wall where the moonlight didn't reach. The lock didn't give clean. It fought him, metal, scraping metal, loud enough that he froze and pressed his cheek to the wood. Footsteps crossed inside the mission yard, slow and lazy. Cole didn't move until they faded. Then he tried again, softer, slower, like he was picking a splinter out of his own skin. This time the lock finally gave, with a sound that felt like it echoed. Inside, the air smelled of dust, old paper, and something sour that didn't belong in a holy place. He didn't rush. Rushing was for men who were scared of what they might find. There were ledgers on the table, and it took him a minute to make sense of them, names neat, dates marked, amounts tallied, like someone proud of what they were hiding. Donations, fines, punishments. Women's names showed up more than once, always followed by notes in the same tight hand. Correction. Discipline. Lesson delivered. Cole swallowed. In the corner sat a box of personal things. A ribbon, a worn shoe, a prayer book with a page torn out. This was what forbidden meant. Not sacred, hidden. He took what he could carry and left the rest exactly where it was. Let the preacher wonder how much had been seen. The ride back to the ranch felt longer, not because of distance, but because every answer came with another question. When Cole stepped inside, Amelia was awake. She didn't ask where he had been. She didn't need to. "You looked anyway," she said softly. He met her eyes. Someone had to, outside. A horse snorted. Somewhere down the river, a dog barked, then went quiet. If you're still with me, this is a good moment to settle in, maybe take a sip of tea or coffee and stay a while. If stories like this speak to you, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me something simple in the comments. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you listening from? Because the next choice Cole makes will cost someone everything, and I promise this story is just getting started. Reverend Crow didn't come riding in with a sermon. He came quiet. The first sign was the horses. Cole heard them before he saw them. Leather creaking. Hooves slow, measured. The kind of approach meant to look polite. Amelia felt it too. She was still shaky on her feet, and she hated that about herself. The rope burns had gone numb. then started throbbing again like her body remembered the tree. She was inside the house, sitting because standing still felt like a gamble, and her fingers tightened on the blanket around her shoulders. "He knows," she said. Cole didn't ask how. Men like Crow always knew. 3 riders stopped just short of the fence. Crow stayed mounted, hands resting easy, smile already in place like it had been practiced. "You should have left well enough alone," he called. His voice carried that calm that makes trouble sound reasonable. Cole stepped forward. "You never should have tied her up." Crow chuckled. "People get ideas when they see things they should not." The deputy shifted in his saddle. He looked like a man trying to remember which side would still be standing tomorrow. He didn't look at Amelia. Crow dismounted slowly, eyes drifting toward the house. Then back to Cole. "I came for what's mine," he said, "and for what you took." Cole felt the weight of the papers inside his coat. Amelia saw the change in his shoulders, the way a man squares himself when there is no clean way out. The first punch came fast, not from Crow, but from the man behind him. Cole took it on the jaw and tasted blood, warm and sharp. His vision flashed white for a split second, and he had to plant his boots just to stay upright. The second man rushed in. Dust flew. Someone hit the fence hard. Amelia didn't scream. She grabbed the lantern with both hands, like it weighed twice what it should, and stumbled to the doorway. Her arm shook, and for a second it looked like she might drop it on her own feet. Then she hurled it into the dirt. Glass shattered, oil spilled, and fire climbed up like it had been waiting. The heat shoved everyone back, and Amelia sagged, knees folding, her strength gone in one rush. For a moment, no one moved. Cole saw her start to fall. That split his attention, and it almost got him killed. A fist clipped his ribs, hard enough to make him grunt, but he didn't step away from her. He shoved the man back with one arm, and with the other he pulled Amelia behind him, like his body was a wall and she was the only thing that mattered. Crow's smile vanished. "This is what happens when women forget their place," he snapped. Amelia lifted her chin, voice steady. "No, this is what happens when men hide behind God." Cole lunged. He drove his shoulder into Crow, knocking him flat, the preacher's hat rolling into the dirt. The deputy hesitated. Then he saw Crow on the ground, dust on that holy collar, and something in the deputy's face changed. The deputy spat to the side, eyes on Crow's swollen face. "I didn't sign on for this," he muttered. He didn't draw. He backed his horse up, like he had decided he didn't want to be remembered for this. When it was over, Crow lay breathing hard, dust on his collar, one cheek swelling fast. Cole was breathing hard too, and his side ached where that fist had landed. The men who rode with him backed off, suddenly unsure who they worked for. Cole stood over him. "This ends now." Crow laughed once, bitter and thin. "You think the town will believe you?" Amelia reached into Cole's coat and pulled out the ledger. "They will," she said, "because they already suspect." The night went quiet again, but it was not peace this time. It was the kind of quiet that waits for consequences. One of the men finally grabbed Crow by the arm and dragged him back toward the saddle. As Crow was hauled away, he turned his head just enough to look at Cole and smile again. "If you think this is finished," he said softly, "you don't know what I'm willing to burn." And standing there under the stars, with smoke in the air and truth finally exposed, Cole had to ask himself one thing. What will Crow destroy next, now that he has nothing left to lose? The sun rose slow the next morning, pale light spreading across the ranch like it was careful not to disturb what had happened the night before. Crow was gone. So was the fear that had lived in the walls of the mission. Amelia stood on the porch, bare feet on warm wood, watching the river move the way it always had, steady and unconcerned with human shame. For the first time in a long while, she breathed without flinching. Cole leaned against the post, coffee in hand, saying nothing. He set the coffee down, took off his old sun-faded coat, and draped it over her shoulders without making a thing of it. Then he walked to the fence that had been hit in the fight, picked up the loose rail, and started fixing it, quiet and steady. Some things didn't need words. "You didn't save me," she said at last. "You just stopped me from being silenced." He nodded once. That's usually enough. She had a choice now, to return to a place that used rules to hide cruelty, or to step into a life where faith meant standing upright, not looking down. Amelia chose to stay, not as a sister bound by fear, but as a woman learning who she was when no one told her where she belonged. The town would talk. They always did. But this time, they would also remember. They would remember the preacher who said something was forbidden and used that word to keep others blind. They would remember the rancher who looked anyway, not because he was reckless, but because he was willing to face what others avoided. Sometimes the right thing looks wrong at first glance. Sometimes the hand that reaches in looks guilty before it looks brave. That is the lesson here. Not about scandal, not about rumors, but about what happens when someone refuses to look away. We all have moments like that. A line we are told not to cross. A truth we are warned not to touch. And sometimes the hardest part isn't the danger. It's the way people will look at you after. Like doing the right thing must have had the wrong reason. So let me ask you something. When you see something that feels forbidden, do you step back or do you look closer? And when someone reaches out in the middle of confusion, do you judge the hand or the intention behind it? If this story made you pause, even for a second, please tap the like button. It helps more than you might think. And if you enjoy stories that linger and ask real questions, consider subscribing so you can keep listening with us. Tell me in the comments what part stayed with you the most. Was it the moment of doubt or the choice that followed? Because in the end, this was never just about a rancher or a preacher. It was about courage that looks imperfect, and the quiet power of choosing to see the truth even when everyone else tells you not to.